this idea of girl power. So lots of women now take on the idea of what we would call today toxic masculinity.
Yep.
They're becoming the aggressor. They're becoming the
Absolutely.
ones who are taking the bull by the horns, so to
Mm,
speak. And so we're seeing a role reversal now in
mm,
terms of how men and women are showing up in the workforce.
mm,
And I think we need to take notice of that as men, that, okay, how do we then respond to that? And how
mm,
do we lean into it? And for me, I feel that's where we can start to practice the idea of being more assertive,
mm,
setting the boundary, moving
mm,
away from today. There's too many nice
mm.
guys. Like, I look at my son who's in his early 30s, and
Ah,
I'm just like, wow, buddy, he's just this nice, just wants to be a nice guy just to get
mm,
along.
mm.
And then yet he has no sense of self. And
Exactly.
so we have to find this balance between
Mm,
maintaining a sense of self of who I am
mm,
and creating enough space for others to be able to exist within
mm,
that environment.
mm.
I never give up. I never give up. I never give up.
Hi guys, welcome back to Neff Inspiration, a show on YouTube and as a podcast with me, your host, Stefan Neff. Today I've got Alain Dumonceaux with me. Alain is an amazing man who is helping other men to become the best version of themselves. And that is so important because we are men, real men. And often enough, our attitudes, our beliefs, the way we hold ourselves to the world are the biggest obstacles for us to become the people who we were truly meant to be. And today going to be an absolutely raw and deep dive into men's health and men's health from a psychological point of view, from us having been there, being the hard man who ended up in trouble. So let's be open and honest about it so that other men can learn from it. Ella, welcome to my show.
Stefan, thank you so much for having me
Mm,
today. I'm
mm.
really looking forward to our conversation.
And it's so hard to start this interview because immediately there are so many cliches coming up into my mind. Boys don't cry and we're real men. Come on, take a concrete pill and get on with life. When in reality, these are actually nearly toxic. These are really holding us back. I know that is true from my own life, but Ella, tell me about yours. Ella, you have been nearly a duplicate of me, although in a very different part of the world under very different circumstances. How was your upbringing? Were you a man's man?
Yeah, I would definitely say that. I was raised, I'm the oldest of five. And so I was raised to be very strong and into and learn really how to be self-sufficient.
Mm,
My parents, as being the firstborn, the challenge for us is that our
mm,
parents are looking for perfection. They want to make sure their children are great examples of who they are. That's my recollection of what it was like being raised as the oldest, and everything, the pressure that was put upon myself and my brother, who was 11 months younger. We really wore my father out. He lived by the idea of spare the rod, spoil the child. And so I had to learn to fit within a mold that was very stoic, that was very masculine. My dad was an extremely masculine man and worked hard for his life and expected us to do the same thing. So it wasn't surprising to me that as I got older and then get involved in the culinary arts and
mm,
cooking, that
mm.
I put the same type of energy that my father did into his career.
Beautiful. Often enough, childhoods are not so nice when we look back at them. And it's hard for us to say we had a bad childhood because when you're living in it, it's actually normal for you. So it is very hard to go back and I'm not doing that in order to lay blame, but in order to try to figure out what has driven you. I think when we look at adverse childhood experiences, the higher the number of them that we can sort of figure out, the more likely it is that there are certain patterns of behavior that we see, either fear avoidance or trauma responses ultimately, fawning, people pleasing. And people pleasing can also translate into your working life. You're seeking external validation. So therefore, you try to absolutely focus on that topic, often to your own detriment. I collected all
Mm-hmm.
kind of alphabet soups behind and in front of my name, um, and my job was everything.
Yes.
Not my job. This was a calling. This was a profession.
Yes.
That I see you nodding. Did you feel the same in your life?
Hearing you tell that, it just, I have goosebumps because it's exactly how I felt about my career. Just
Mm,
everything. I think as men, we tend to identify ourselves with what we do
mm,
in life. And for me, for a large point of time, it was being a chef and being in the culinary world. And in that world as well, it was very masculine in its day, extremely masculine. There were very
mm,
few women in the field, especially
mm,
leading brigades or leading kitchens. There
mm,
was really a place of high competition. And I think that's what drove me to want to do that. I was
mm,
blessed to be mentored by a chef who had competed in the Culinary Olympics and
mm,
brought me under his wing. And in the sacrifices that I saw him make, I was
mm,
willing to do that, and I was willing to take that step. But what I didn't really understand is that while I had this passion, this energy in this one area, I still had another life that was still going on, and I was married and
mm.
children, and but the focus was so much on my identity as being this
Yeah,
one piece.
yeah,
And if I could only figure this out and be the best here,
yeah.
then everything else would take care of itself. And of course, that's not the way life works. And we need to recognize that we are more than just one part of our life, whether that be fathers or leaders or brothers or
Mm,
husbands. All of
mm,
us, we should, as men, we have these different roles, and we tend to not pay attention to all of them, and that's what
mm.
gets us in trouble.
100% agreed. Now, it's so hard because obviously we are touching upon some very raw stuff here that
Mhm.
brought both of us into trouble. Now, often enough, we then compound that trouble by our behaviors to compensate for that. And with that, I mean, you're working so hard. Were you also playing hard? With that, I mean, the culinary field is often quite wet as far as the use of alcohol and lubricants are concerned, or quite dry as far as powders up your nose are concerned. There is, you have to be awake after all, and then you're awake and go, 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 the whole day. And then how did you switch off?
Yes, and that's so true, and unfortunately, it's still highly. Those are things that are happening today. For me, it wasn't those vices. The vice that caught me was, there's the chef in the background, but who's on the front? Who's in the front of house? Who's serving?
Mhm.
And so for me, it was the promiscuity of that environment, and that's what really ultimately brought me to my knees and really took everything away from me, because were spending so much time with these people, and a flirtatious comment here, a little something there, and next thing you're doing things that you really shouldn't be doing it. And that's, for me, was the downfall of that business. And it took a while to really recognize that at first, well, there's nothing wrong with this, right? It's just a little harmless fun. But it's not. It really, a piece of us starts to leave, especially when you have a family that you have to take care of, and there's other
Mhm.
things that are going on. But yeah, absolutely, these things tend to be it's almost like the honey, the little sweetness of these roles and these positions that draw you in, and the
Mhm.
next thing you know, you're trapped.
You could argue that this was maybe the time of your youth, and nowadays the attitudes of both men and women have changed. I doubt that a little bit. Am I right to assume that essentially the same drivers are at play nowadays in 2025, compared with when you started your career?
I completely agree. I think that's ingrained in us
Mm,
as humans, right? The if anything, they may have be amplified just slightly. You have to remember when I was in my prime, that was in the early to mid '90s.
mm,
There was no Bobby Flay, Iron Chef,
mm.
food TV. It wasn't sexy like it is today. It's really
Um,
attractive for people to see that. And so
ah,
now you have this persona, these personalities.
ah,
And
yeah.
so I would say it's more challenging today than it is before. And I think the bigger issue that we have to deal with today is this idea of getting the number of likes on our work. How much time are we spending? As men, are we sitting there measuring ourselves now because, oh, I put a beautiful plate out and I only had 50 likes and nobody likes this work. And I just see this evolution of how things have changed and really have amped up the pressure on us.
Good point, very good point. I did actually not take that into consideration. What is the prevalence of how many narcissists are working in your field now? Is that, I mean, type A personalities, that's a given. Go-getters, man-driven. You often see in shows depicted the kind of really kind of bossy, screaming, throwing things chef. I always thought that maybe was the very, very distant past. I cannot see that nowadays still happening as much. Am I mistaken?
No, you're absolutely right. That type of behavior, you know, the HR world has really stepped in and managed that
Right.
for us.
Yeah.
And so
Right.
that's not as prevalent. I do remember working in kitchens and seeing frying pans flying across the kitchen. Absolutely. But today
Yeah.
it's more, I would say it's more cutting in terms of how you're being how you're being led. I think it comes more of the while the emotion isn't as physical or as aggressive,
Right.
it's much more mental battle and being ignored or being, you know,
Mm,
slighted and set aside. I see that as being a much larger challenge for the industry today because
mm,
there is a prevalence of there's every walk of life now is in the kitchen and every walk of life can be in different roles. And so today, how we're leading, especially as men,
mm,
being mindful of how we're showing up and are
mm,
we coming across as being this misogynistic,
mm,
chauvinistic individual? And if that is our demeanor, how can we show up that is still assertive as a leader,
mm.
but allows that other individual to have a sense of respect and a sense of space so that they can grow and flourish as well. And I think those nuances we see that in lots of different professions are different
Mm.
today than they were 20 years ago, 30 years ago.
And you could argue that when a pan is flying, at least you know exactly what is going on. At least there's an honesty about it, an authenticity about it. It's difficult to mistake that for what it is. Whilst the more nuanced things, well, we men are not so good with our emotions, with our feelings, and certainly not good in picking up on cues, etc. When I say we men, this is quite a generalization,
Mhm.
because many women are just as emotionally blind. Yet we always attribute to them this beautiful cornucopia of emotions and picking up on everything. Unfortunately, no, this is just as much a cliche as everything else. There's a whole range of people out there, and it's hard. My ex-wife often was saying, "Oh, what do you mean? I don't understand you." At least she was honest to me. So tell it to me clearly. And at least she had that insight after many rows between us that she was opened in. It was interesting for me to see that in the other sex as well. So I think we men are struggling more because we are putting actually obstacles in our way, just the way we have been raised or the way we think we have to show ourselves. Very few men will be willing to ask for help, and I think this
Yes.
asking for help, I think, is again leading us astray.
Well, we see it as a sign of vulnerability, right? If we think that we have to ask for help, and
Yeah.
again, I'll go back to my upbringing. That would have been very difficult to do. It was very difficult to do, and it's not that there wasn't support and help to be there, but the environment that says it's okay for
Mm,
me as a
mm,
boy to ask for help was not
mm,
available. And so today I find that the younger generation, the Gen Zs, I guess
mm,
now, coming
mm,
through, are more willing to ask for help, more willing to participate,
mm,
and yet they still are working within an environment. I still believe that the culinary environment, that restaurant, hotel type hospitality environment, is still a very competitive environment
mm.
because the margins in the business are slim.
Yeah.
Everybody's working hard to try to squeeze out what they can from it, and so how we interact in that in it
Mm,
is what needs to change. And this idea of girl power. So lots of women now take on the idea of what we would call today toxic masculinity.
Yep.
They're becoming the aggressor. They're becoming the
Absolutely.
ones who are taking the bull by the horns, so to
Mm,
speak. And so we're seeing a role reversal now in
mm,
terms of how men and women are showing up in the workforce.
mm,
And I think we need to take notice of that as men, that, okay, how do we then respond to that? And how
mm,
do we lean into it? And for me, I feel that's where we can start to practice the idea of being more assertive,
mm,
setting the boundary, moving
mm,
away from today. There's too many nice
mm.
guys. Like, I look at my son who's in his early 30s, and
Ah,
I'm just like, wow, buddy, he's just this nice, just wants to be a nice guy just to
mm,
get along.
mm.
And then yet he has no sense of self. And
Exactly.
so we have to find this balance between
Mm,
maintaining a sense of self, of who I am,
mm,
and creating enough space for others to be able to exist within
mm,
that environment.
mm. And I think for men, I I wouldn't now change words or change descriptions. I think we should stick with masculinity. We
Mm-hmm.
are men, but masculinity is actually leadership. Masculinity is actually showing up with our best intention, but actually just showing up as ourselves. I think that is the key thing. So, masculinity for me is equal to leadership, to good leadership. Now, toxic masculinity, okay, that's obviously something that we don't like. Aggression, and especially aggression in the absence of emotional intelligence. Now, that's a hell. And that is the difficult people out there. Also, we should not forget that not every one of us among us is hardwired the same way. 10% of people have got personality disorders. 1% of the population are psychopaths and sociopaths. So we have got a whole range of neurodivergent states of minds which have different rules. They behave in different ways. So we can't just put a blanket rule out there. So there's so many factors coming in. But at the same token, I think there are certain basic rules that a good leader shows. And I think we can take those rules and adhere to them, try to adhere to them, try to follow them, try to show them in everything that we are doing. That is really integrity, isn't it?
Mm.
The how we behave when no one is watching. That is integrity. And I think that again, these are actually very similar rules. Now I've got my
Yes.
set of rules, my values maybe. what are your rules as far as you are thinking about what is a man? What is a strong man, a strong leader?
Yeah, that's a great question, Stefan. For me, my rules would be is that am I being true to myself? In other words, when something is happening, whether I'm in an environment, within a meeting or having
Yeah,
a conversation, am
yeah,
I being true to myself, or am I giving up myself because I have this feeling that I need to fit in?
yeah.
And so the first rule for me is to being true to myself. That may mean on occasion that what I have to say might not be well accepted by the individual or the group. And so then the second rule I have is, how do I express how, my position in a way that allows me to still create the boundaries that are important to me,
Mm,
and give them a sense of that they have earned respect as well.
yeah.
And takes practice, because not everybody hears what you have to say, and the way I'm saying something may not be interpreted in the same manner as you. When we talk about
Mm,
rules and values, we have different images that come to mind for us.
mm,
Somebody else may look at that as, well, it's a framework.
mm,
So the other thing that's important to me is also understanding is what is the types of language
mm,
and what is happening for the individual that I'm spending time with, so that I can relate to them as best that I can, so they understand what's going on. And
mm.
so truly being true to ourselves, being able to express then what that means to others, so others can get a sense of who you are. And then finally, for me, it's also about being sure that I am coming from a position of love
Mm,
for them and for others,
mm,
versus a position of I win and you lose. And I think for me personally, early in my career, it was all about winning at all cost.
mm,
And that meant doing whatever it is I needed to do. And sometimes that might have meant stepping on a colleague in order to
mhm.
go a little bit further. And I hate to admit that today,
Yeah,
but really that's where it is. So today, as I've matured and I look at where I am today and building relationships with my son,
yeah.
it isn't about a win-lose. It's about, how do I get into position that both of us can grow closer together, and that there is some space for both of us to get a sense of a win, for lack of a better term.
That's beautifully put. That's beautifully put. These are great values and great rules to live by. There's an old saying, you have got one mouth and two ears, and you should use them in the same ratio. We are so often concerned with getting our point across and not listening to what the other person is saying, why they are saying, and asking us why are they saying what they are saying, what is really their message, what is really happening for them. I loved the way that you put the focus on the person that you're at the moment dealing with. In this example, your son. What is their situation? And that's beautiful. But it's so hard, isn't it, when you're yourself in stress, under stress, or in distress, then that goes by the wayside. You're focusing only on yourself. So therefore, I think one of the key things that we need to learn is the reflection and the actually creating quietness in our own lives. And actually, before we talk to anyone else and show up for anyone else, we need to show up for ourselves. We need to give ourselves the room to be open, to be honest to ourselves, and ask the same questions that you would ask someone else, ask them to you. How do you create calm and space for yourself? How is that possible? Because we all live different lives and we live busy lives. What do you do to actually give yourself the respect, show yourself the respect and the love of just shutting up and listening to your own emotions?
For me, and it took a while to get to this point, but I have a morning routine that involves doing some meditation, prayer, and just setting intention for the day. And so I take that with me. And the days that I do not do this small little piece, this 15 minutes or so in the morning, are the days that I have the greatest struggle. And so what I've done to also to do that is I have a little booklet that I have that sits on my desk, and inside of it has for every day of the month, there's a different prayer for it. And so I read this prayer for whatever the day. It's the same month every month, but different, different days. So on today's the 25th of the month. So what is the prayer for the 25th? And it never fails to surprise me that I read exactly what I needed to read to get myself recentered in that moment. And so I find that just to take the time, just a minute, just wait a sec. I feel myself falling off of where I want to be, where I truly am as an individual, deeply, not the mask that I put out forward, but who I truly believe to be in my heart. And when I can take that moment, that minute or two to do that and get recentered, then I show up much differently. And so,
beautiful.
Really, I think we always fall to the level of our training. We hear that in different avenues, right? And so what does that mean? Well, how much practice? Like I said, if I miss a day or two of my morning routine, well, I'm, my training for that day wasn't just to the level that it should have been. And so that really sticks with me about how much have I done my training today? Did I do my training? How many days in a row? And if it is one in a row again, that's okay. I no longer measure myself by these external ideas of validation. It's about, hey, Alan, this is okay. We can start again, and we can keep progressing, because that's what life is. It's the never-ending onion. We continue to peel layer after layer and reveal more of us. And I think when we can find those practices that help us recenter, then we become much more intuitive.
I never thought. I often use the onion example when it comes to trauma. The trauma comes in layers, that also healing comes in layers. But I've never appreciated the onion also as our life, and that there's always more to learn, always more to explore. What a beautiful idea. I love that. And I absolutely agree with you. I absolutely agree. And we all need to find or we need clarity in our lives, and we need to be men. We need to be leaders in our life as well. So you stopped, you focused, you thought, okay, this prayer seems to work for me. So now I create a habit, a pattern in which I incorporate that. So these were all conscious and strong steps that you took. You took action, but in a very concise way, in a very precise way, and you do that consistently. So tiny steps in a consistent fashion will have huge impacts, and this is a classic example of it. You explore gratitude with that, this reflection that you're doing, the prayer that you're doing. You spend time there for yourself. You get great insights. With that, you probably get a release of dopamine. You show yourself some love. You show yourself some respect. These are all the things that are happening in that 1 minute. And those, short few moments. And when you think about it, these 15 minutes, that's just 1% of your day, of your waking day, 15 minutes. It's really nothing in the bigger scheme of things, yet it is such a powerful sign of self-respect, of self-love, of radical self-compassion, that you give yourself that time. And that's amazing. So I love that. I absolutely love that. I've got a similar ritual. I try to incorporate the sun into that as much as possible. I actually just literally looking into the sun, getting my cortisol up in the morning, getting that boost to get the circadian rhythms just aligned again. And but essentially doing the same. Whilst I don't believe in God, I somehow have come to believe that there is something greater out there So, and in the absence of a better word, I mean, I don't want to say, hey, aliens or hey, energy, hey, universe. I call them angels. So fair call. But it's just, I still don't believe in imaginary friends, but there's clearly something bigger out there. And when I do talk to angels, then I feel so much better. And
Yeah.
guess what? They're talking back. As you say, your prayer is just showing you what you needed to hear on that day. Well, the universe out there has its way of showing me, okay, thank you. And it's just crazy. It's just crazy. Once you actually start with this little mind game, if you want to be derogatory, what comes back? Okay. So it's even if you don't believe in deities, I encourage everyone out there to give yourself or to create an equal ritual, whatever that is for you, where
Yes.
you come to a moment of peace in yourself. And that is so powerful. This is so beautiful. And it could just be actually when you're on the way to work and you get out of the car, just maybe come a little bit early and maybe just spend a minute next to your car, just look into the sun or look out there. Whatever it is, ground yourself.
Yes.
Take a few deep breaths. And for me, breathing is such a powerful thing. Do you do breath work? Is there anything that where you use your diaphragmatic breathing to change your physical state?
I will do that. And I was saying to somebody the other day about I was involved in doing a bit of men's work, some of my for my own self, my own training, and it was very deep steeped in somatic work. And I didn't recognize until after going through this program how much I hold my breath. And then I
But that's
started to
normal. That's normal. That's normal.
Yes, absolutely. And then I recognized that it was under moments of stress, whether that was a 1 out of 10 or a 10
Yeah,
out of 10,
yeah,
that was the coping mechanism right away, is just, freeze up.
absolutely. Absolutely.
And so once I recognized that I was doing that, and then this it would happen in the shower. I'd recognize that it'd be happening, as I'm driving around in any moment. And what really started to
Yeah,
resonate with me is, wow, look at how I'm handling things
yeah,
today in this
yeah,
moment and
yeah,
today. And
yeah.
so from a breathing perspective, that's the extent that I've used it to date. But it is something that is very powerful to
Mm,
slow down and
mm,
breathe from the diaphragm
mm,
versus these
mm,
short, choppy breaths like I just was,
mm,
doing just here just most recently.
mm. And I think that's so beautiful. Remember that your emotions will very much change your physical state. Now, you can also turn this around by you learning how to change your physical state. You can change your emotions dramatically. That is certainly holding true for any kind of panic, any kind of anxiety, any kind of when you feel really ratty and I can change that. And I became fascinated about it. I became then a breath coach. I guess what I do, I throw myself into a topic and learn as much as possible about it. What came out of that journey didn't actually take too long for me to create rituals and create habits. So, for example, when we're starting this interview, I asked you for 10 seconds pause, and that is my ritual to actually ground myself. So I've got it down to a fine art. I need about 10 seconds to completely change my state, to calm
Mm.
down, to focus, etc. So, whilst breathwork initially will feel strange, you very soon can master it and you can actually use it to very quickly switch off panic attack, to switch off anxiety, and to put yourself into a state of taking action.
Mm.
Because here I was taking this deep breath in a very controlled way, then stretching my neck muscles, and then going for it. That was 10 seconds, but in those 10 seconds, I took a number of action steps. And once you have taken action, however small it is, it's much, much easier to continue and keep going. So, whatever that looks like for you, if you can learn how to control your emotions, especially the
Mhm.
ones that you don't like, with relatively simple steps and certainly steps that don't calm you down, I mean, I could have taken a glass of champagne because I like my lifestyle so much. Me, or snore a line of cocaine or whatever it is. That, yes, of course, that changes your physical state. But would it not be cooler if you can do something that doesn't harm you and that actually makes you the better version of yourself? I certainly have chosen in recent years rather to focus on those kind of things. I strongly believe in the power of ritual and the power of creating habits and creating, I guess, smart goals with that. But there's all taking action. How much does that play a role in your life?
It plays a massive role, and
Mm,
how it used to serve me was in my professional life.
mm,
And then I started to, after having some negative experiences with losing everything in my personal life, because I was so focused on goal driven in professional life, that I started to, well, why don't I do this in my personal life? Like, what are the
mm.
goals and aspirations that I have
Better.
for my marriage, for my personal life, my body,
Mm,
my financial position, all these other things. And that gives me a sense of direction. I think
mm.
for lots of us, when we look at our lives, we tend to excel in one or two aspects of it, but not in
Yeah,
others. And
yeah,
if we just take the things that work for us
yeah.
in other areas and implement them in these others, we may not become as proficient, but we can sure be much better than we are today in those areas. And that's what I look for, this progress over perfection idea, to continue to move the needle forward. And
Mm,
can I become more sound in other parts of my life?
mm.
And if I am as sound as I am in my professional life, that's great. But it's no longer a target. It's about
Mm,
being better in that.
mm,
What does better look like physically for me?
mm,
I will never have a body of Arnold Schwarzenegger, because I don't have the desire and the drive to do that.
mm,
But I do have the desire and drive to not have a dad bod,
mm,
to not have a big belly, and be in shape, so that as I'm getting older here, it's important that, and grandchildren are starting to show up,
mm,
that I have the physical ability to get on the ground with them and
mm,
tussle and do the things that grandpas can do,
mm,
instead of thinking, well, if I can't be like Arnold, then why should
mm,
I bother even going to the gym or eating
mm.
better? It's
Absolutely.
just about really being sure and clear about what does that goal look like.
Mm,
And then, one of the things I learned with the competing in the Culinary Olympics was just with the end in mind,
mm,
and just, okay, if this is the ultimate goal, what do I have to do the day before that,
mm,
and the day before that, and the day before
mm,
that? And pretty
mm,
soon you have a roadmap
mm,
of what that
mm,
looks like. And now it's about getting up, you have intention, and you just start to take that one step forward. And
mm.
eventually you ultimately reach your goal.
100% agreed. It's beautiful, beautiful that you say that. Having said that, I mean, here you were competing, here you were comparing yourself, and comparison with others, especially at times of social media, is brutal and it's soul destroying if you let it. How do you combat those negative thoughts, those negative ideas that immediately come in? You think, you're focused on yourself, you're feeling good, and you think, wow, I mean, in my case, I've lost 30 kilogram. So I should be extremely, extremely grateful for that. And I am. Yet, when I look at other Instagram, people in our life that are, oh, they're looking good and they're spending time in the gym and they're successful. And here I am, divorced on the wrong side of 50. And the thought of, I'm not worthy, I'm unlovable, I am a failure, I mean, this negative self-talk, the self-criticism that is so brutal. How do you deal with that? No doubt it's in your mind as well.
Mhm. Oh, absolutely. Every time I release a podcast episode, every time I do a little bit of work, right? That nasty piece comes to me. And then I ask myself just one question: is this true?
Good. Yeah.
Or what needs to be true for this to actually be relevant to me?
Very good.
And if I'm really honest with myself, it's not true. My idea to compare myself to this
Yeah.
is an untrue statement. And so
Mhm.
then I can come back and go, okay, well, what is true about it? Maybe, Stefan has done more things, and that's why he has more success. My
Mhm.
perception of what's happening. That could be a true statement. The other
Mhm.
true piece is, you know what? I'm only seeing the best.
Mhm.
We talk about social media. We're not seeing
Mhm.
them at their worst, even though there are lots of coaches out there now and trying to tell the story about showing how they're the worst, yet they're standing in front of their beautiful mansion and
Exactly.
the great looking wife and the rented Lambo and all that stuff. I sit there and go, what needs to be true and what is true?
Yeah.
And so what is true for me is that doesn't resonate. I don't need to measure myself to anything.
Mm.
What I need to measure myself is
Mm.
to me. Am I better today than I was yesterday?
Exactly.
Could I be further along the path?
Mm.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Now, am I willing to do a little bit more to move myself along? And so, as
Mm.
long as I remember to ask myself,
Mm.
is this what needs to be true about this, or is this true? Then I can recenter myself to what is truly important.
Cross-examine your thoughts. That's how I call it, to actually
Yeah.
really think, is this true? And then I have a follow-on question to ask, why are you telling me that? And it often enough, it's fear avoidance, just one of my trauma responses, one of my, just the way I am wired from childhood. Or is there actually truly a message there? You are a fat beep. Well, the message is actually true. I can still lose some weight. So there is a truth to that message there. Do I need to be as rude and as mean as I am just talking to myself? I wouldn't talk to that like that to anyone else, not my worst enemy.
Mm-hmm.
I would treat them still with respect. So why do I treat myself like that? So obviously, there's still some healing to be done. There's still some things to be done. So I for these voices nowadays I'm a little bit grateful because in the past they've driven me, they have run my life. Nowadays I have got means of actually cross-examining them and taking what I need from those voices and then putting them into their place. I think that is so important. We need to embrace our negative emotions and the negative voices just as much as we need to embrace our positive ones.
Mm-hmm.
And coming back to the numbing, I have been a master escape artist, a master escape artist, really. That was my life. And when you said the promiscuity, I certainly can reflect back that this was part of my life as well. And it was the alcohol. I never really took drugs, uppers or anything like that,
Mm-hmm.
but it was the hunt
Mm-hmm.
for the girls.
Yeah.
And then as soon as I had it, I moved on.
Yeah.
And that was bizarre. And in actual fact, the same is true for whatever accolade and external gratification I looked for in my job. As I did one exam after the other, exam after the other, I never stopped to celebrate. Does that ring a bell with you? I mean, you would have competed, and were you saying, "Wow, let's take a moment to actually smell the roses," or would you immediately throw yourself into the next conquest?
Yes, you said two things there that really resonated with me. One was about the hunt,
Hmm.
and that truly is a reflection of my life. Is everything was about the hunt, and I can remember, coming off stage at the Culinary Olympics, and winning 2 silver medals. Yet I had colleagues on my team who had won gold, and the first thought that went through my mind is, okay, I got to get back to work. I need to get back to
Exactly.
work
Exactly.
because it was only a silver.
I know.
It wasn't a gold.
I know.
And so it was back to the hunt and the drive
Yeah.
to try to accomplish that. And I think at times in our life that serves us, and that I think when we really pay attention to what that hunt looks like, what are we hunting for? It was the external validation of somebody to come to me, and that somebody was my father, to come to me and say, Alan, I'm so proud of you.
Hmm.
And him and I never had an opportunity to have this conversation. He's longer with us. But as I've done my work, I can tell you today that that's what it was for me in my 20s and my 30s. It was the hunt for success, was looking for the accolade, the thank you from my father than anybody else. And so the journey now has turned around, and it is truly for me. And and what I mean by that is no longer about the external validation. I don't want the external validation from others. I want to know that I did good, that I can, look in the mirror at night and I can go, today I was the best man I could be. Or if I wasn't, it was, I had a weaker moment, didn't show up the way I wanted to. And this is what we're going to do to be better, Al, and have that conversation. And so today I'm in a position where I do lots of charity work, lots of volunteering. And while there's opportunity for accolades, and I don't look for it. And I actually ask not to have the name put out anywhere, because it isn't about me. It is for me. It is my way of service to this world, but it isn't about me. And so I think as we mature as men, and we understand that this masculine part of us that gives us our drive and our energy to do things, if we harness it correctly. I never want to I would hate to see men lose their power and their energy. I think of ourselves as as being charioteers, and all our emotions are these horses in front of us. And our job is to harness that. Harness that chariot and ride it to the best of our ability. And if we can do that, man, you're living as full men.
You're a man of words, you're a wordsmith, and your metaphors. It's lovely, because many of the metaphors I had never looked at in this way. When I look at the horses, I see the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. And but to actually see yourself riding a chariot, driven by your emotions, it's a beautiful picture. And it's so true, isn't it? It's so true. But we still have control. These emotions, we cannot stop these emotions. You can maybe guide them, but these are wild horses, and they will have their own mind. They will, rear up or do whatever horses do, at maybe times when we don't want them to. But then again, this is where you will not be able to drive this chariot in one direction the very first time you get on it. And I think that is the problem. We have been running away. We have been blind to our emotions for such a long time as men. We are driven by them. How many men out there who have lived a life of anger and of red hot rage, berserker kind of, and have no idea how to control these emotions. And some of these things, some of these things are actually celebrated in certain things. If you have the ability to be a very violent man, well, when you go to the army and under the right circumstances, that is actually very celebrated. Thank you very much. And then after about 15 deployments under the worst possible conditions, and you come home, and then you're supposed to be nice daddy, and everything is all right. And yeah, now just put that little berserker nice into over there. We don't need him anymore. Yeah, it doesn't work like that. And I think there is so much there. So each and every man listening out there, guys, you have got your own challenges. You've got your own story, your own background, your own mixture of positive and so often negative things that have happened to you. They have formed you, but they are not in control. You are in control. You can't do major magic things. That's the 1st of January, from now on I will be in the gym about 8 hours a day. Yeah, right. Okay, no, that doesn't work. But there are things that do work. And first of all, it's the moment of silence to actually figure out who are you and what is happening right now. Where are you showing up? And for that, you need a framework. And I love that you were thinking of it, of the various pillars, so to speak, of your life. You need a framework, 6 or 8 kind of pillars. Depends upon how you formulate them, but there will be no
Mhm.
doubt the issue of work and of money, and it's likely that most men will have focused on that. But then there is the issue of relationships and relationships with a significant other, with your family. That's already where many men have maybe been blind to a certain degree, guilty as charged. And there are many other pillars. Your health, again, another subject that so many men neglect. And when was the last time you've seen your GP or your family physician? As simple as that. The finances and your insurances, etc. So instead of
Yeah.
rather focusing on your work, bring the money in, how is the other rest of you looking like? And these are some of the examples that where so many of us have fallen foul, and then it needs an injury, or it needs a major disaster, or it needs the sickness or death in the family to suddenly pull the rug from underneath you. And
So true.
I wonder if there's not a better system out there. And I guess to a certain degree, I congratulate anyone who's listening out there who is viewing this, because you already have taken action. You're here, you're listening to that, and that is amazing. So, wow, there is so much that we can learn. And Ella, you're an amazing man. You're an amazing man because just in our discussion here, we have both gone through so much shit, and but we are willing to take it on the chin, which is again leadership.
Yeah.
We demonstrate ownership here. We extreme ownership, that you are accepting that yes, you have fucked up in your life big time. Um, you, in your case, you have got your story. I've got mine. We both could go into details, but we don't need to. I think the enough has been said there. But the question is, were we willing to get up again? And yes, we were. Were we becoming better versions of ourselves in response to what has occurred to us? Or did we stay in our victim role? Probably both is true. We both, I didn't explore that with you, but I certainly stayed in the victim role for far too long. Nowadays, I am far more survivor and far more thriver. So
Mm.
victim, um, by moving away from certain beliefs, becomes a survivor, and then by taking action in a consistent fashion and trying to become the best version of yourself, that becomes a thriver. So it's a very clear roadmap that so many of us have discovered. There might be minor variations, but ultimately, I think 80–90% of what is important we have discussed, and I think that is so beautiful. It took us an hour to lay out the key points in the journey to become a better man, to become a real man, to go complete circle here. Um, and it is so beautiful. So it doesn't take so much. Why are not more men following that? If we know it's so easy to do, why don't we do it?
That's a great question. And I truly believe the reason why we don't do it is that we haven't had that profound moment in our life where life
Mm,
has finally said to you, you must change. And
mm,
it's a sad state that we have, we need to get to that point. I say that life every
mm,
day gives us
mm,
opportunity to nudge us towards
mm,
being better men.
mm,
And some of us will awaken and recognize that nudge.
mm.
Others wait a little bit longer until it feels more like a push. And some of us, myself included here, wait till we get the 2x4 to the side of the head and then
5 times.
we act
Exactly.
5 times.
Yeah.
And I think we don't want to deal with that because we're afraid. We're afraid what
True.
we're going to find.
True.
We're going to find this parts of us, this stuff that we don't like. And now we have to confront the beast.
Oh
And
yeah.
the beast is within us and is us. And if
Yep.
we're willing to confront that, then we can start to deal with it with him. And we can deal with that part of who we are. But until we're willing to do that work, we're going to continue to flounder and move along. And then we have challenges, and not just in our personal lives, but look at how society has challenges. And it's because not enough men are standing and willing to
Mm,
really recognize
mm,
what is within them and what they need to do to live differently. And I think when we start doing that, we can profoundly change the world. We don't need to be a president or a prime minister or any of that stuff. We just need to
100%.
take care of family, ourselves, family, community first. We do that, and everything else is going to be looked after.
I love that. Absolutely love that. Alain, you're an amazing man. There's so much truth behind what you said there. If people feel the same and have gelled with you, where can they find you? Where can they learn more about you?
Best place to go is go to theawakenman.net. That's my website. You'll find all the resources there. And today, right now, there's a free resource you can download. It's called Setting the Compass. It's an opportunity for you to reflect what the last 12 months of your life look like and write a newspaper headline for yourself. And then I challenge you to do the same for the upcoming 12 months. And it just gives you a little bit of a flavor for the kind of work that we do here at The Awakened Man. And it's a free opportunity, a free download for folks to practice and do a little bit of work.
Brilliant. Guys, look down there into the description of the YouTube video and of the podcast. All of his links are down there. And this was a great interview. I'm very, very grateful to you for showing up as a real man, as a real leader, and being raw, open, honest, and exploring where we both have been and the lessons that we've learned, often the hard way. But to now have become certainly better versions of ourselves. Are we perfect? Hell no. And this would be sad, because then there is nothing I can learn, and there is nothing more that I can know. Then I might as well die. But no, I actually, yes, I am wiser. But hopefully this is nothing in comparison with me at one stage being on my deathbed and looking back and thinking, not bad, not bad. You did well.
Nice.
Indeed. Ella, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Stefan. I really enjoyed our conversation today. A fabulous host.
Well, thank you. And you guys out there, look after yourself, live with passion, live with intention, and make the best out of your world, and therefore change this world in which we are living.
I never give up. I never give up. I never give up.